The average person thinks they spend $86 a month on subscriptions. The real number is 219. That gap didn't come from forgetting. It came from something the companies built into day one of every free trial. Not the reminder email they send on day 13. Not the fine print about automatic renewal. Something earlier. Something that happens before you even decide whether you like the product. And once it happens, the math changes. Not on paper, in your brain. Behavioral economists have a cluster of terms for different parts of this process. The endowment effect, the IKEA effect, psychological ownership. Each one describes a real phenomenon, but when they combine inside a modern digital onboarding flow, they produce something the textbooks don't have a single name for yet. Behavioral economists piece it together from three separate effects, but the outcome has one name: the ownership grip. And by the time this video ends, you'll see it running in the background of every free trial you've ever opened. Every app you kept paying for longer than you planned. Every subscription you technically meant to cancel. Nadia opened the budgeting app on a Thursday evening in February. She'd seen it mentioned in a thread about getting finances under control. The free trial was 14 days. No commitment, the screen said. She entered her card number anyway because the app required it, and the interface walked her through setup. Link your bank, name your spending categories, set a savings target. She renamed 3 categories, changed the color on one of them. Created a goal called emergency fund, $6,000, and watched a small progress bar appear at 31%. That took 11 minutes. She came back the next evening, added a note to a transaction, adjusted the savings timeline. Day 3, the app knew her paycheck schedule. Day 7, it sent her a small summary. Your most consistent expense category this week, groceries. Your progress toward emergency fund, 33%. She felt a small satisfaction reading that, like something was working. Day 14 came and went. Nadia paid $12.99. Then again the following month. Then again. She would have told you she kept it because it was useful. That's what she believed. But that's not what the research shows was actually happening in her brain between day 1 and day 14. The problem starts with biology. Digital goods have an inherent problem that physical goods don't. Your brain evolved for a world of touchable things. When you hold something, a mug, a book, a jacket in a store, your brain begins assigning ownership to it almost immediately. Researchers at the University of Basel and Boston University documented this precisely. Mere physical contact increases what people are willing to pay for an object. The brain reads touch as a signal of possession. Digital products can't do that. Pixels don't trigger the same response. A cloud-based dashboard, a streaming library, a budgeting interface, your brain defaults to valuing these significantly less than equivalent physical items. Companies building software as a service have known this problem since the beginning of the subscription economy. So they solved it. Not by making their products feel more physical, by making you build something inside them. Nadia renamed those spending categories. She didn't receive a product, she modified one. She didn't consume the interface, and she constructed part of it. And the moment she did, a completely different system in her brain activated. The same system that fires when you assemble flat-pack furniture, solve a difficult problem, or plant something and watch it grow. Researchers at Harvard, Tulane, and Duke named this the IKEA effect. People assign disproportionately higher value to things they helped create compared to identical things they didn't. In 4 separate experiments, the effect held consistently. The critical variable wasn't quality, it wasn't usefulness, it was whether the person had invested their own effort into the outcome. The effort Nadia invested was 11 minutes. A renamed category, a color adjustment, a savings target with her own number in it. That was enough. Because here's what the IKEA effect in digital systems looks like, differently from the physical world. When you build flat-pack furniture, you do it once and it's done. When you customize a digital tool, the investment is continuous, incremental, and invisible. Every time Nadia added a transaction note, She was adding a row to her internal ledger, not of expenses, but of self-investment. Every week that passed, the product became less a rental and more an extension of her own financial thinking. By day 7, she wasn't evaluating a trial, she was checking on something she'd built. But the IKEA effect is only the second mechanism. The third is the one that physically hurts. Neuroimaging research, including work out of Stanford and Kyoto University, mapped what happens in the brain when people are asked to give up something they consider theirs. The region that activates is the anterior insula, the same area associated with physical pain and visceral disgust. Not metaphorically, neurologically. Giving up a possessed object produces a measurable aversion response, equivalent in brain activity to mild physical discomfort. The word cancel on day 14 doesn't reach Nadia's prefrontal cortex first, it reaches her insula. Her brain, without consulting her, had already run the math. The discomfort of losing this thing I've built inside is greater than $12.99. The transaction clears before she's consciously decided anything. A study from the University of New South Wales found that the brain's activity patterns reveal a person's decision up to 11 seconds before they consciously report making it. The moment Nadia thought about canceling and felt a flicker of resistance, that wasn't her deciding. That was her observing a decision her brain had already finalized. This is the ownership grip in full operation. Not forgetting, not laziness, not inattention. A neurologically enforced attachment to a digital space she had been guided step by step to build inside a company's product during a 14-day window they designed specifically for this purpose. The 14-day window wasn't chosen by accident. A field study tracking more than 680,000 users across 190 countries looked at the relationship between free trial length and conversion to paid subscription. The finding went against what you'd expect. Longer trials didn't improve immediate conversion rates. What they dramatically improved was delayed conversion. Users who left but came back, or users who stayed past the point of genuine product evaluation because they had accumulated too much self-investment to walk away cleanly. The 14-day free trial isn't timed to give you enough time to evaluate the software. It's time to give your brain enough time to make it yours. The credit card requirement at sign-up isn't a billing convenience. Research shows conversion from free to paid increases by more than 5 times, from around 8% to 30 to 60%, when users enter payment information at the start of a trial versus at the end. The automatic charge isn't a default. It's the architecture of least resistance. When canceling requires active effort and keeping requires nothing, the brain routes toward nothing. Almost without exception. None of this is buried. It's not in terms of service. It's the explicit design philosophy of the modern subscription economy, executed by product teams with deep familiarity with behavioral science, tested continuously on millions of users, and refined toward one metric: how long the ownership grip holds. Nadia didn't know any of this on day 14. What she knew was that her emergency fund progress bar was at 34%, and the categories were set up exactly the way she'd organized them, and she'd have to start over somewhere else. And it was just $12.99. She has 8 active subscriptions now. She thinks she has 5. The gap between those two numbers, $219 versus $86, isn't a memory problem. The brain stops treating the payment as a choice. Once a product becomes part of your daily infrastructure, it stops categorizing it as an expenditure and starts categorizing it as part of the landscape. You don't think about the cost of electricity every time you turn on a light. You don't think about the cost of a streaming platform every time you open it. That invisibility is the final stage of the ownership grip. The product has fully integrated. The payment has become ambient. The brain no longer registers it as a decision, and so it never comes up for reevaluation. The charge clears, the cycle continues. Nadia hasn't opened 2 of her 8 subscriptions in over 40 days. She's still paying for both. Not because she forgot they existed, because opening the cancellation page means facing something she built inside them. And her brain won't let her do that without a fight. There's a condition the original researchers documented that explains exactly why Nadia's categories are still there 11 months later. The IKEA effect only holds as long as what you built still exists. In the lab, the moment researchers disassembled the object in front of participants, took apart what they'd made, the attachment collapsed to near zero, instantly. Companies building subscription products know this. This is why companies don't let you export easily. When Nadia clicks into her budgeting app, her emergency fund bar is still there. Her renamed categories are still there. Her 11 months of transaction history, manually tagged, personally organized, is still there. That history isn't stored for her convenience. It's stored as an anchor. Every time she thinks about leaving, her brain runs a fast calculation. All of that disappears. The bar resets. The categories revert. 11 months of self-investment gone. Her anterior insula fires. She closes the Settings tab, pays another $12.99. The ownership grip isn't a design flaw. It isn't an unintended consequence of enthusiastic onboarding. It is the product. The digital subscription economy has a fundamental structural problem. People instinctively value digital goods less than physical ones because the brain hasn't evolved to feel ownership of pixels. The ownership grip is the solution companies built to overcome that problem. Forced customization, incremental self-investment, automatic payment as default, and data accumulation that functions as an anchor. These aren't four separate features. They're four stages of a single psychological system, engineered to create attachment where none would naturally form. The people building these onboarding flows know exactly what the IKEA effect is. They know what the anterior insula does. They know that 11 minutes of setup on day one is worth more to retention than 11 months of product quality. This isn't speculation. It's product roadmaps and A/B test results. The people using these products, Nadia and 65% of millennials who have paid for at least one trial they meant to cancel, are not making irrational decisions. They're making decisions that are completely rational given what their brains are experiencing. The problem isn't that they can't budget or that they're irresponsible with money. The problem is that their brains evolved to protect physical things, territory, tools, food, and are now applying that same protection logic to a progress bar on a budgeting app. Understanding that gap doesn't make the feeling disappear, but it does change what the feeling means. When Nadia feels resistance opening that cancellation page, the small tightening, the thought about the progress bar, the sense that she'd be losing something, she's not getting a signal that the subscription is valuable. She's getting a signal that her brain has been successfully integrated into a retention system. Those are different things, and for most people, most of the time, they feel identical. That confusion is worth, industry-wide, hundreds of billions of dollars a year. Nadia opened the budgeting app on a Thursday evening in February. She renamed 3 categories, changed a color, typed in $6,000 and watched a bar appear. 11 minutes. That was the moment the ownership grip closed. Not when she forgot to cancel. Not when the card was charged on day 15. Not when she decided to keep it. The grip was already set. By the time the trial ended, she wasn't evaluating a product anymore. She was protecting something she'd built,